Reverb and delay-based effects often go hand in hand, providing instruments and vocals with a sense of depth, air, and richness. Artificial reverberation, or ambience, provides a way to add a needed sense of space to recordings where either the natural ambience of the recording room was sacrificed to close mic techniques for isolation and control later in the mix, or the sounds were never in a room in the first place, like synths and sampled instruments. And delay-based effects cover a wide range from the simulation of two or more performers playing or singing the same part, doubling, to rich modulating effects like chorusing and flanging, to the old standby echo, with effects ranging from classic slap echo to complex musical delay-based rhythms. On one level, setting up reverb and delay effects is simple. Most DAWs and plugin bundles come with presets for all the classic effects and then some. But when it comes time to get more specific settings and choices to best and most creatively serve a song or arrangement, then things can get a little more complicated. Even a slight misapplication of reverb and delay effects can have some detrimental effects on a sound or a mix, and there are a number of possible gotchas in there waiting to trip up on wary users. So it's not surprising that as an engineer or mixer is working toward a greater mastery of reverb and delay processors, there'll likely be a few mistakes made along the way, specific choices or habits you might fall into that might not be the most effective ways to use these tools. This series of courses focuses on some of those things, common and sometimes less common uses and applications that it would probably be best to avoid. This course, of course, covers 10 things to watch out for when using reverb and delay-based effects. It presents a series of suggested don'ts, mistakes, or just less effective practices, along with suggestions for alternative approaches that might enhance the use of these processors. The course assumes a basic familiarity with reverb and delay effects, but just to be thorough, I'll do a very brief review of the basics before jumping into the 10 don'ts themselves. Real acoustic reverb, or ambience, is the buildup of reflections in a room that accumulate into a dense sound field, which contributes a sense of depth, space, and air to sounds in that space. Artificial reverbs either simulate this with a dense buildup of digital delays, or convolution reverbs sample, digitally record, the response of a real acoustic space. These recordings, called impulse responses, or IRs, are true to the sound of actual physical spaces, but offer fewer controls for shaping the reverb quality, while algorithmic reverbs, that create their effect digitally, offer more controls to customize the simulated room sound. These include size, which affects multiple parameters, and decay, to control the length of the reverb tail, a critical setting in mixing. There'll also usually be ways to control the tonal balance of the reverb effect, simulating variations on the reflectivity of surfaces in real rooms. Delay processors allow for the creation of several classic effects. While most of these can be found as separate preset effects units or plugins, dialing them up from scratch with a general-purpose delay processor allows for the greatest flexibility to customize the effects, exactly what's needed in real-world mixing situations. The shortest delays, around a millisecond or two more or less, give us flanging, that classic, edgy, shifting, metallic effect. Slightly longer delays, around 15 to 30 milliseconds, give us chorusing, an electronic simulation of the rich effect of multiple instruments or voices, all playing or singing the same part together. Both of these effects require modulation. The delay time is periodically shifted by an LFO, low-frequency oscillator, which provides the swirling, shifting tonality that defines these effects and accounts for their richness. LFO rate and depth controls manage the speed and intensity of this aspect and are key to getting the best, most appropriate version of the effect. There's also feedback, which intensifies the effect, and in the case of flanging, is a critical setting. That same 15 to 20 millisecond delay also allows for doubling, electronically simulating the sound of two or more performers for the same part. As an alternative to actual performance doublings, ADT, automatic or artificial double tracking, brings its own character to this technique, which has been used for years and is heavily employed in most modern mixes. Finally, the familiar echo effect is generated by longer delays, 80 or 100 to around 150 milliseconds or longer. Classic slap echo has been in wide use since the 50s.
We're still spinning around, but there's something that's gone on our way.
Often with feedback applied for repeating echoes.
We're still spinning around, but there's something that's gone on our way.
But many players find a more musical use for longer delays. Syncing delay time to tempo, they generate complex musical rhythms from simple parts for a highly creative application of this basic effect. So, with that brief rundown out of the way, let's start taking a look at some of those things to watch out for when using reverb and delay-based effects to add that welcome air, depth, and sheen to our tracks and mixes.